If you can get these 4 pieces of information into the template that I provide you here, then you're off to the races and you can master Calcarea Carbonica fully. So in this video, I'm going to take my last 23 years of experience as a medical doctor in homeopathy, as an author, mentor, a homeopathic software creator, and the director of TQFS Academy for professional development of homeopaths. And I'll try and condense it into a 4-part framework that I used to follow if I need to master any new or old polycrest remedy completely from scratch. I call it my stages template. I've taught these templates to thousands of students and members in my academy over the last 15-20 years. So if you're new to the stages template for studying Materia Medica, you can check my free video on mastering the Materia Medica through different stages. It is the gold standard on how to approach cases and study and master the Materia Medica. I'll put a link of that below this video. So there are 4 levels to this template. Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3, and Stage 4. So we're going to study Calc Carb in these 4 stages. Now, a huge hurdle to people who are looking to study Materia Medica is that classically, we are all trained to focus only on Stage 2 or Stage 3. But if your patient walks into your clinic, he or she can present at any one of these 4 stages. So it's very, very critical that we learn the entire spectrum of the Calc Carb remedy in all its manifestation, so that you do not miss the remedy if your patient expresses at a different stage. So let's start with Stage 1. So what's Stage 1? Stage 1 is when we're learning the diagnostic pathological symptoms of a remedy. Symptoms that are based on a disease diagnosis. They are common pathological symptoms of the remedy. So, they could be a sphere of action, which means specific locations or targeted localities which that remedy has a targeted action on. They could be clinical syndromes, and they could be any form of, specific systems or organs that your remedy works on. Now, most of the remedy information that comes from at Stage 2 comes from material doses of the remedy, given in either mother tincture form, biochemic form, or low potencies and low dilutions in a, possibly a decimal scale or low centesimal scales. So where do you get this information from? Well, you can get it, in case of Calc Carb, you can get the provings in physiological doses. And where are they present? Well, a Materia Medica documents some of these provings, but most of them will come from indications of hypocalcemia or hypercalcemia. So you can look on conventional world, you can look for the toxicological effects of the remedy, indications and side effects of calcium tablets, and all this information is vital to help you understand calcium or Calc Carbonica as a drug in material doses. Now, clinical symptoms or clinical diagnostic symptoms that have been cured or resolved from calcium in physiological forms or from calcium tablets also form a part of this Materia Medica picture. So where do you find this information from our books? Now, I'm going to talk about my favorite Stage 1 books for Calc Carbonica. So my first book that I recommend would be Blackwood. It's a manual of Materia Medica, therapy and pharmacological information. What I really like about this book is it gives you the dosage at Stage 1, it gives you the physiological action of the remedy, and it gives you those clinical indications that we are looking for. My next favorite book is Boriki. Now, the key to Boriki is, when you scroll down, you look at the relationship of Calc Carbonica to other related remedies, especially those rare calcium salts at Stage 1. This is gold for you to differentiate and find that, fine tuning into specific diagnostic symptoms and what sort of calc salt could be indicated at that particular stage. Boger is, one of my top books for Stage 1. It gives you these regions or sphere of actions that have been distilled through actual clinical work. So these are the targeted organs, the targeted places where Calc Carb has its amazing action on. The next book I'm looking at is Boland. It is again, a wonderful book for pediatric homeopathy, and it gives you all those specific targeted organs and systems of Calc Carb, especially for children. The next one is Bird's Physiological Medica. Now, this gives you the systematic understanding of, these 4 or 5 important key systems and important key pathophysiological places where Calc Carb has its action on. Then we have Clark, JH. Now, Clark gives you the list of clinical diagnostic conditions that Calc Carb has been proven to work on and resolve. The next one we have is Clark GH, the ABC Medica. What I love about Clark GH is he has given potencies at different, Calc Carb potencies that can work at stage 1. And then I love Dunham. He talks about allopathic therapeutics, and this is real gold where you can get the information of, where these remedies can work at that regional stage 1 level. Hugh was the book that Burnett cut his teeth on. Burnett is my number 1 guru, my number 1 stage 1 homeopath within, the old masters. And he has a Encyclopedia of Drug Pathogenesis, volume 1 to 4. And what I love about this book is it has given you Hahnemannian provings of Calc Carb in low potencies, in those really decimals and decimal scales at that mother tincture form. And then we have Nash. The best part about Nash EB, which is his testimony of the clinic, is he's given you cases for, Calc Carb in these low potencies and dilutions. For example, when we check case 52, it gives you what exactly has Calc Carb done for this particular patient in that really physiological stage 1 potency, as you call it, and how it has helped that patient. And then we have Nijbai. Again, it gives you the pathogenesis of Calc Carb. So, obviously you can get these from any software, and you can get them through the free community version of the HomeoQuest. I'll put a link to these books below the video. But remember, these are the books that I have used not once, not twice, hundreds of times to understand where is that scope of action of Calc Carb at that really physiological, really factual, targeted, organic, systemic, physiological, pathological level, which we basically miss out on, right? Whenever we are studying Calc Carb in that broad spectrum place, right? So you will ask me at this stage, why learn stage 1 homeopathy for Calc Carb? What's, the whole idea of doing it? Now, this is what I have distilled, the clinical stage 1 understanding of Calc Carb. So if I look at this, the top targeted sphere of action from boiled down from all these books is in the soft tissues, we have the muscles, the tendons, where it causes this softness, flabbiness, weakness, this no tone at all state, and abscesses at that level. And then in the lymphatics, it has this very strong tendency on the cervical and the abdominal lymph nodes, especially related to tuberculosis. Then in the skin and the mucous membrane, it causes catarrh, polyps, growths, benign tumors. So this is where the soft tissues come. In the hard tissues, we have the teeth and the bones, and it creates this sort of, slow, imperfect ossification of the bones, and so weaknesses of the bones, and rickets and polyps and exostosis and caries and delayed dentition, delayed learning to walk because of weak bones, and all this sort of state which comes up with the bones and the teeth. And then we have a very strong action on the endocrinal and the metabolic level, where you have the slowness of metabolism, where you have obesity, especially abdominal obesity, possibly some insulin resistance, coldness, hypothyroid states, and then we have an overactive parasympathetic nervous system, and that's why we have this sort of a state which is slow, sluggish, stagnated, and where there is stasis in every form. And then on the blood, it causes this iron deficiency anemia, and it promotes coagulability of blood, and hence it is a hemostatic as well. So when you have this picture in front of you, these 4 or 5 important components of Calc Carb, what I have seen is in clinical use, when you are prescribing at a pathological level, where there is nothing the patient talks about, and there are patients who come to us and they don't understand homeopathy at all, they don't know what to say, and all they have is a disease diagnosis, all they get are blood reports, all they get to you are, things that doctors have written for them. And when you can combine 3 or more of these pathologies together and you see it in a patient, and based on that you prescribe the remedy, that will make a huge difference at that level for that patient. So, for example, in my OPDs, when we used to be at the hospital clinics, I could see how Calc Carb was used at that level. For example, when we had children coming to us with a family history of tuberculosis or a past history of tuberculosis, which was very prevalent in India when I was, studying at the medical schools. And if that child, there was not a lot of information that these children or their parents could actually give us. And what if the consultant would see cervical lymph nodes were enlarged, if the child had recurrent bronchitis, and there was a tubercular history, 3 things, and Calc Carb. And Calc Carb worked like a miracle. So don't underestimate. You don't have to take a history for 1 hour to get and understand Calc Carb. You can just prescribe based on these symptoms. So by the way, if you're enjoying this, give us a thumbs up. And now we'll move to stage 2. So what exactly is stage 2? So stage 2 is 1 step above stage 1. So now, you get some more information beyond the diagnosis. And what you get is some sort of peculiar concomitants that accompany the diagnosis. So for example, you have a diagnosis of, say, inflammation of the joints. A patient comes with, painful knees, right? And you have this inflammation of the joints. This is a diagnosis which could be related to osteoarthritis, it could be rheumatoid arthritis. But in this case, you ask the patient and the patient gives you one key information. It could be a modality, like, say, for example, I'm worse working in damp weather, or the pain is more when I'm working in water. This itself becomes a key therapeutic indication for Calc Carb, right? So say, children come with diarrhea, and in the pediatric OPDs, the therapist, the consultant would pick a baby and, and then if there is a sourness, a smell which is very sour, the vomiting, the curdled milk, the stools in the nappy, if that's sour, that was a Calc Carb state, and that was a Calc Carb baby at that level at stage 1. Or we had a history of eruptions that were suppressed, and then you have epilepsy starting after that. Epilepsy from suppressed eruptions, it's a Calc Carb state. So you see, these therapeutics stayed in my mind because I had seen such patients use, and consultants in the OPDs, in the hospital clinics, use Calc Carb only at that localized level, in 15 minutes, and you get the information that you need to prescribe. This is what I call beyond diagnosis, right? Just at the therapeutic level. You don't have to go into the entire constitution. You just look at that local thing and find a key modality, a key sensation, or a key concomitant. Just 3 things. Right? And the potencies generally used at stage 2 work the best at stage 2 would be around the 12C to the 30C mark. Where do you find this information? You find it from the clinically confirmed symptoms which have been resolved at that level using these potencies. So all our proving books basically have this information, and all books with therapeutics in their names, or names like regional books or specific books on specific regions which have Calc Carb in it, you will find the information in those books. Now, the idea is not to really go and start memorizing these symptoms. It's a drudgery. It's too boring. It's too frustrating. You just can't go and read them all and start. This is your therapeutic Calc Carb. It is. I would never ever ask you to read a proving and master the Materia Medica from a proving book. Provings are important, but they are reference books. They're not books to study a Materia Medica. And even therapeutic books, if you pick them up, I would not really, ask you to remember them, because we have technology today that can help us out. So this is my hack on how I use, the therapeutic information. Now, there are some keynotes that I remember. because I've seen those cases. So cases are great if you can go and study a case and then remember the remedy from that case. But stage 2 remember is well represented in our repertories, information of any remedy. So I will use a repertory and I will use technology to help learning therapeutics and make it fun. All right. So I'll give you an example here. So I'll go to remedy comparison. Now, obviously, you can do this in any software. I'm using the HomeoQuest software to do this. And I'm going to choose Calc Carb. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the word filter to type in any form of therapeutic symptom, diagnostic symptom, specific symptom, regional symptom that I need information on Calc Carb for. So say, and it's going to basically use it as a filter and find it and analyze it from every possible repertory that we have in our Medica, in our database. Yeah. So say for example, you have a patient coming up with amenorrhea. All right. And I'm just typing in a part word there and we say analyze. Now what happens is this gives me all the symptoms of amenorrhea for Calc Carb from my entire database, a repertory database, right? So what do we see here? We see mens is absent, mollamen only. Mollamen is any form of physiological stress. Mens is absent. If you go down, we can see here something interesting. Fright after. Mens is absent with dropsy of the uterus. So now we have some more information. We have a causative factor. We have a concomitant. Then what else do we see? Let's put in another word, mens is absent, and analyze. Well, we have some more information here. We have mens is absent, milk present in the mammy with mens is absent, or absent-mindedness with mens is absent. So can you see you have some interesting concomitants coming up here? We have absent-mindedness, we have milk in the breast, dropsy of the uterus, and we have fright. So we have 4 key concomitants coming up. So say this is an interesting concomitant of milk in the breast, which is a hyperprolactemia state. And if you realize in hyperprolactemia, there is a combination of menstrual irregularities, we have milk in the breast, and then we have osteoporosis. So that comes up in the Calc Carb picture. So again, a Calc Carb could be a very good specific for that form of, amenorrhea. And if we go and look at Calc Carb for mens is absent in Quest. Now, Quest is a search from all the Medica as well as the repertories. So if you put it mens is absent in Quest and you look for, so these are the top remedies for mens is absent. Now we'll find Calc Carb here. There it is. So you will see all the repertory data, but what we are going to also look for is the Medica data. And this is important because this information is not yet in the repertories, right? So what we see is this is a woman, 43-year-old. So this is directly from the mouth of the brewers and also the mouth of the clinical patients of these homeopaths. And then in this case, it's Herring. And there is a patient, 43 years old, knee swollen, pain on motion, abscess discharging yellow creamy substance, mens is absent since trouble in the knee 8 years, and chronic arthritis in this woman. So can you see this is a beautiful pathological stage 1 and 2 information and where Calc Carb has helped this patient. So can you see knee pain along with absent menses, along with abscesses in, you're discharging yellow pus, and along with arthritis. How beautifully you have 4 key concomitants, pathological concomitants at stage 1 and 2 coming up in this patient. So this just tells us where the whole spectrum of Calc Carb at stage 1 and 2 comes up, right? And this is gold for us. Let's look at another symptom. So if I'm looking at, say, Calc Carb for bronchitis. So I still have Calc Carb selected here, but now I'm looking at bronchitis symptoms. And what do you see here? Again, you have 3 or 4 important things. Asthmatic bronchitis, bronchitis in fat children, bronchitis with dentition aggravation. What else do you see? Bronchitis with hoarse voice. and bronchitis in pneumonia and tuberculosis. So what you see is, I've seen Calc Carb prescribed wonderfully well in people who have hoarse voice with cough and bronchitis. Now, this is a keynote combination that happens in Calc Carb, and it becomes a neo-specific. There's another interesting thing, bronchitis with diarrhea in the evening. So you get those keynotes, and there are 4 or 5 keynotes for every such therapeutic, sort of diagnostic symptom or every such clinical condition where Calc Carb can be used. Right? Now, it's not just stage 2, remember, is not just about physical problems or physical, local issues. You can have something like a mental issue as well. Say, for example, grief. Let's see how does Calc Carb, focus around grief. Now, mental symptoms are not necessarily a constitutional symptoms. This could be somebody who's had, some sort of a problem or episode happening in life, and they are grieving. And how can this grief express at stage 2? So what do you see here? You have grief. What sort of grief is that? Some sort of grief from insults, offenses after long past. And that comes up very often. So you can see it's about insults or offenses that have been long, long ago, and that grief is silent. It's pent up. It's not expressed directly. What else do you see? There's this interesting symptom here coming up. Heat of the vertex with grief. So wherever a patient has headache, but a very peculiar type of headache, vertex, burning, or heat. If that comes up, you have your Calc Carb. Another thing, you have hyperthyroidism after grief. How beautiful is that combination? Not many remedies would have this sort of a, 2 or 3 things coming together to create a peculiar state. What else? You have distension of the abdomen and the stomach after grief. Tendency to abortion from suppressed grief. And that's it. So you have 4 key things. You have burning and heat in the vertex or some sort of peculiar headache after grief. You have, tendency to abortion after suppressed grief. You have distension of the stomach and the abdomen after grief. And then you have grief from long past offenses. 4 key symptoms, that's your Calc Carb grief. So you see, you get into the practice of doing this for your polycrest remedies. Have fun. It does not matter what therapeutic condition you are looking for. But as you start looking, as you start playing with your databases, with your softwares, you'll get better at it. You'll get better at remembering things. You'll put down those points, and that will build up your regional Medica. Now, how do you use this clinically? So let me tell you one thing. This was the bread and butter strategy in our hospital clinics and at the rural charity clinics that I worked at. These one-line keynotes would be very helpful. And having done this homework really helped for some of the main complaints that my patients came to me for, right? Now, my GEMS Academy is where I invite teachers from my hospital OPDs in my medical school in India to conduct free webinars for members in my academies to run, these webinars on certain Medicas at stage 1 and 2 and specifics on certain diseases to learn therapeutics. I'll put the link to the GEMS Academy below for all the existing webinars we have on these stage 2 diseases. But if you download my free resources below and join my homeopathy network, you can get invitations to these webinars that are conducted once a month, right? Now, there are some specialized, such teachers from my school, from my medical schools, who have written specific books on these regional Medica for specific issues and aspects. Like, for example, Dr. Gajanan has written some Medica on rheumatic complaints, on ovarian cysts, on thyroid disorders. Dr. Ashok Borkar has written a Medica book on diabetes. Dr. Trupti, who is the HOD of the gynec department, has written a book on pregnancy, a repertoire on pregnancy. So check them out. It's important that you understand these books are written because they are distilled from these trainers' clinical knowledge. They've used these remedies, and that's the type of information they've put out. So you have cured clinical cases from contemporary practices here. Now, The fourth thing I want to really tell you about stage 2 is that if you cannot remember all these, and you don't have to remember all these, how you can use that clinically is quite important. What happens at stage 2 is if you don't know, if you have a patient, you get some stage 2 information and you have some local sort of concomitants, but you cannot get a remedy, you cannot remember a remedy that comes up for you, you don't have to worry. Our repertories are our best resource. Our repertories are our best resources. However, you don't have to use every repertory. Don't use the big repertories. You use a repertory like Bonninghausen. And my favorite book is Mastering the Bonninghausen repertory, the Boger Bonninghausen repertory. Now, this is the repertory that is my go-to tool whenever I'm repertorizing a local problem of a patient. So there are 3 steps I follow. One is I take all those stage 2 symptoms, I divide it into location, sensation, modalities, and concomitants, and I use my Bonninghausen repertory to analyze and find the best remedies that come up for this. And then from those final group of remedies that come up at the end, I do a small little differential diagnosis to find out what remedy comes up. So say, for example, if you have 3 or 4 remedies coming up in your final Bonninghausen analysis, and one of them is Calc Carb, and now you are looking at, giving Calc Carb to this patient. So say, for example, a patient comes in with acid reflux and heartburn, and you have Calc Carb coming up along with another remedy, say natrum phos. Okay, so this is what I would do. I've chosen Calc Carb here. I will choose natrum phos. And then I'll choose compare because I want to contrast the Calc Carb and the nat phos. And I will put here, say heartburn, because that is the main chief complaint that the patient has come to me with. And these are the 2 remedies that come up very strongly up for heartburn in my repertorial analysis. So what do you see here? You see something very interesting. What's happening here is you're seeing symptoms of heartburn that have Calc Carb but do not have natrum phos in them. Similarly, you're seeing symptoms of natrum phos which do not have Calc Carb in it. And what you see is when you have heartburn after fatty food, heartburn after milk, and heartburn after sweets, it's mostly natrum phos. So it's mostly for fatty, sweet, milky foods. Whereas heartburn after hard, dry food, which is the exact opposite, is Calc Carb. So this would be a very, very interesting sort of, specific question I might ask my patient. After that 2 or 4 minute repertorization, I'm trying to distinguish between 2 remedies here, and I ask him the specific question if the patient hasn't actually spoken about is, do you feel better after fatty food, or do you feel worse after fatty food? Do you prefer a dry, hard food, or do you prefer softer, fattier, richer foods? And based on that, you will be able to make a differentiation here and make the best prescription for your patient. So if you want to learn more about this repertorization process and differential diagnosis of the remedies, check my course. It's a free course on mastering the Bonninghausen repertory that should be, that is absolutely helpful for every beginner and every student who want to analyze cases at stage 2. Right? Now, if you just study Calc Carb at stage 1 and 2 as a beginner student or a camp practitioner, that's totally fine. I mean, you can still use Calc Carb effectively. You can still help your patients with it wonderfully well. So many of the wonderful homeopaths that I studied under as a beginner, as I was growing into homeopathy, I've worked with, they have been prescribing remedies for, after a case taking of only 5 to 10 minutes because they've been working only at stage 1 and 2. And still they were, using homeopathy so powerfully and using Calc Carb so powerfully. And if you want to go into that sort of, and if that's your focus, that's absolutely fine. But some of you might want to go to the next level. You want to create more deeper transformational changes in your patients, change people's lives with Calc Carb. Then you need to understand this remedy at that level. That is what I call stage 3 and 4, right? So this is where you can actually change gears with your homeopathics. And I'll be covering that in the next video of this series. In the meantime, I have all the links for you below that I've mentioned in this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.